Welcome to Unit 3, Lecture 2. In this lecture, we're going to talk about us and our response to the biosphere. We're going to piggyback on some of the things that we talked about basically all year up until now, and how our actions, for good or for ill, can help the environment. We use a lot of different things in the environments, and these are called ecosystem goods and services. A couple of those things are just because we're organisms that happen to live there, okay? But then other things we actually do other stuff with. So there are four main categories, and you can see them here. We've got supporting, provisioning, cultural, and regulating. So supporting is basically just, some of the stuff that happens that we use, but we don't necessarily use directly. Photosynthesis. Okay, we've been talking about photosynthesis. Photosynthesis we don't use directly in the sense that we're a plant and we photosynthesize, but we eat plants and we eat things that eat plants. Okay, so that's kind of a support for us. Biogeochemical cycles, the carbon cycle. Okay, which is what we spent last unit talking about. Provisioning. Now this is just because we're organisms that happen to live in the environment. So we get food, we get water, we get fuel, we get all of those things. And then cultural is all the things that we do as humans. So we like to go out into the world. We like to go and see things. We like to go climb mountains. We like to go jump off of mountains in some cases, okay? Skydiving, all of that kind of stuff. That's just all the things that we do because we're human. So we do fun things with the environment. And then regulating is stuff that we don't necessarily think about unless something bad happens. So flood protection is a huge thing, especially along the shore. The ocean is prone to flooding. Okay, there are a lot of different cases where this happened. All right, one of the big things was with Superstorm Sandy. But what happens is when the coastal environment is designed to protect the inland from floods. So the coastal environment is designed to withstand floods. When we start affecting the coastal environment, we start affecting our flood protection, water purification. So water trickles down through the soil into our aquifers, and as part of that trickling down, it's kind of like a coffee pot. Okay, percolating down through the coffee grounds. And so in the case of coffee, it gets the flavor, and then it creates coffee. But in the case of water purification, it actually cleans the water as it goes down through that. So those are things that we don't necessarily think about unless we actually have a problem and something goes wrong. So that's the regulating. So there are four main classes that we use that are really important for us. So biodiversity equals protection for us. And that's one of the things that as a human species that we kind of get and sometimes don't get. So biodiversity is the variety of organisms, ecosystems, and genes, okay, in the biosphere. So all three of those things are part of our biodiversity. If we think about bio means life, okay, life diversity. So the diversity of life is really important to protect those ecosystems and goods and services that we rely on. So there are three levels: organisms, ecosystems, and genes. So all of those things come together to create the biodiversity that is the environment that we rely on. There are some main threats, and there's a lot of text on this slide, but I'm going to actually show you a couple of pictures to hopefully help make it a little easier. So habitat loss, so losing their homes. Okay, so we develop, all right, we build our homes, but in the process of building our homes, we actually can encroach on their homes. So this is one of the things that we were talking about with Yellowstone wolves. When we were talking about with the wolves, the humans were coming in, okay, and they weren't happy with the top predators for a variety of reasons, so we started killing them, so we started reintroducing them. Invasive species, okay, invasive species we were talking about with the Great Lakes, with the zebra and the quagga mussels. All right, so when species come in from other environments, they and the rabbits, we talked about the rabbits in Australia, so they outcompete. All right, and they can drive native species to extinction, and so that actually lowers our biodiversity. Overharvesting, we're really good at this, especially when it comes to fishing. Our fishing techniques have really improved. And so what happens is populations can only replace themselves as fast as they can reproduce. So if we're harvesting them much faster than they can reproduce, okay, then unfortunately we're depleting that species. And then we can think about this when we talked about K versus R selected species. Pollution, which is a big one you guys have heard about. Now, there are two types of pollution, non-point and point source pollution. And I have a picture that'll probably actually better explain it than I can in words. And then biological magnification. So what happens is biological magnification is quantities that aren't very big, let's say in the water. What happens is they actually get larger and larger and larger as they move up through the trophic levels. So concentration increases through the trophic levels. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that in class. Okay, and then global climate change, which is kind of a huge problem where we have greenhouse gases, which are good when we don't have too many of them. But as we increase greenhouse gases, what we're doing is we're adding more and more blankets to the earth. Okay, so we're gonna, like I said, I have pictures to kind of help because that was a lot of words. So habitat loss. So here's a picture of an orangutan. Okay, a lot of problems in Borneo with them. Invasive species. So here's a shopping cart that was pulled out of the Great Lakes, and this is covered in mussels just because they are so good at competing. And then overharvesting, you can see over here. All right, the overharvesting, look at how many of these, I think they're tuna, okay, they look like tuna. We're so good, like I said, especially our fishing practices. Our fishing practices have gone through the roof with speed and efficiency, but on one hand, that's great for us because we get more fish to eat, but on the other hand, that actually will cause it to be much harder to eat fish in the future. All right, non-point, so I was talking about pollution. So there are two types of pollution. So we've got non-point source pollution. So non-point source pollution is all this trash here, all this debris, all this litter, because we can't point to who it is, all right? So non-point source pollution, you can't necessarily point to who dropped that cigarette butt or who threw that tire out. And then point source pollution means that we can identify where it came from. A lot of times point source pollution is related to factories or businesses that are dumping wastes. We can actually point to it. So in this case, we can point, all right, to the drain pipe. So that's the difference between non-point and point source pollution. And then global climate change. So here we see a bunch of different greenhouse gases. There are quite a few of them. I know we focus on carbon dioxide, but there are a few greenhouse gases. And so what happens is greenhouse gases are increasing. Now, greenhouse gases aren't bad. If you can see here, all right, so this is our years. Okay, you can see here, we always had some greenhouse gases because we need them. They're like a blanket creating the atmosphere over Earth that helps Earth stay livable. So we need them. So that's good. So they're important. But what we're starting to see now is that the greenhouse gases are skyrocketing. Okay, much faster than ever before. And you can see here with some of our data, we've got some dips, some peaks. Okay. All right, there's some variation in our greenhouse gases. But what's happening now, and basically from the Industrial Revolution on, and you can see this picture down here, starts in 1880, okay, in the Industrial Revolution and on, our temperatures are actually going up. They're trending upwards, all right? And so what's happening is those greenhouse gases are getting added, and they're like adding a blanket to the earth. And so we just keep adding blanket after blanket after blanket after blanket. And as we add blankets, okay, what happens? Those blankets cause the temperature to go up. Okay, so we want some greenhouse gases, but we don't want nearly as many as we've got. Okay, so what can we do? All right, so there's a few different things that we can do. We can do large scale. We can work to protect endangered species. We can work on sustainable practices, and we can work on protecting open space, because if we protect open space, we protect plants, and we protect the biodiversity that lives there. And if we protect plants, what are we protecting? We're also protecting photosynthesis. We're also protecting the removal of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, which happens to be one of those greenhouse gases. So this is one of the problems with deforestation. Deforestation doesn't just take away the habitat, doesn't just destroy the biodiversity of that area, it also causes us to lose plant life. And if we lose plant life, we lose photosynthesis. And if we lose photosynthesis, we're actually making the carbon cycle happen. Or not the carbon cycle, but we're causing carbon dioxide to increase with no way of coming out of the environment. So there's a lot of things that go into that. And then on small scales, we can limit our water use. So take showers instead of baths. Turn the sink off while you're brushing your teeth. Okay. All right, so we can limit our water use. Okay, we can limit our car use. So spend a day where you're not actually using your car at all. Or when you do have to go out for errands, make sure you put them all into one day. Okay, compost, recycle, and dispose of your trash properly. Okay, so all of those things. So the small scale you guys have all heard of, and then the large scale, some of the things that we can do. So your wrap up, I want you to go to this website. So I want you to find an organism on the endangered species list. So there's a list of them. And what I want you to do is, why do you want to save this organism? Why is it important to you? What makes it special? What makes it interesting? Okay, what is one large scale way to help that organism? And what is one small scale way to help that organism? Okay? All right, I will see you in class. Have a great day.